and as I would assume from the thrust of his question, he is concerned about the cost of a system that he's trying to determine whether it's costing us more in terms of Transfer 2010. Would he then join with me in saying that because we have a segregated educational system, and it's quite clear that there is one particular sector, the maintained sector, that has cost a duplication 3 or 4 times the amount of budget? And our members from the Alliance Party will always remember that I'm very good at quoting the cost of division document. Is he going to be consistent and say that ultimately the best way to reduce the costs of education is not to have all the segregated systems that we currently have?
I'm afraid no, I can't agree with the member on that particular issue.
Well, Dominic Bradley, whom you saw there, is with us now, as is Nelson McCausland of the DUP. Mervyn Story isn't available, but thank you for stepping into the breach. Has your colleague here let the cat out of the bag? Is the DUP really trying to get rid of Catholic education altogether?
No, I think Mervyn was responding quite clearly to the point that had been made by Dominic. Dominic was raising the issue of the hypothetical costs that would be associated with legal cases around transfer. I did find that a bit strange when one looks at the record of the SDLP, because the SDLP minister is the very minister who took a legal case against advice that cost the ratepayers and taxpayers of Northern Ireland really, I suppose, tens of thousands of pounds, if not more, a case which he ultimately lost. So the track record of the SDLP in regard to legal cases isn't exactly great. But the point I think that Mervyn was trying to make is that if you're looking at the costs associated with education and you want to reduce costs to put more money into frontline services, then the issue of duplication is very much to the fore. And that comes in many forms, not just in terms of sectors, but also about the duplication of having 2 teacher training colleges. Absolutely unnecessary in this day and age. So there are issues there to be looked at, and that fits in with the whole review of public administration as regards education. OK, well, Dominic Bradley, fair point.
Well, just to answer the previous point that Nelson made with regard to the Minister for Social Development, the judgment in that case vindicated the Minister on all the major points, so let's put that one to bed first of all. I find it slightly ironic of the DUP, who are vehemently opposed to integrated education, now to be coming out saying that we should have a single education system. If they believe that, why do they not lend their support to the integrated movement? And, you know, we must look at all this in the context of the history of education here in Northern Ireland. Lord Londonderry, who was the first Minister of Education here, he sought to establish a secular education system here. And it wasn't the Catholic Church which opposed him. In fact, it was Presbyterian Church which opposed him, and he gave in to them and established a faith-based system.
Well, is it time to reconsider then? Perhaps the SDLP could take the lead?
No, the SDLP has a very clear policy on education. We believe in parental choice. After all, it's the parents who pay the taxes, and in many cases Catholic schools have been paid for by Catholic people, and therefore they have a right to them. Our policy, as I said, is that parents should have the choice, be it Catholic education, integrated education, controlled, or Irish medium. The parents are the people who pay, therefore they have the right to choice.
Nelson,
I don't think we need to go into a history lesson back to Lord Londonderry. We need to look at the situation as it is now. We have a controlled sector that is open to everyone. There are controlled schools in various parts of Northern Ireland where the intake of pupils is almost entirely Roman Catholic, and they provide, in effect, a Roman Catholic education. There are schools where the intake is entirely Protestant or almost entirely Protestant, and there are schools where the intake is mixed. So the controlled sector is one that is open and accessible to everyone. We don't need to have another system. We already have a system there that's open to everyone.
And what about the point about cost? You know, if it's the parents who pay the taxes, then they should be free to have that choice. And of course, choice is a big thing for the DUP when it comes to academic selection.
Well, I think that one of the difficulties has been that up to now, the controlled sector has been disadvantaged, and there has been, in effect, preferential treatment for the maintained sector, with their own council for Catholic maintained schools and so on. What we're doing now in terms of the review of public administration is to establish certain principles and see how those work out. We're deconstructing the old system That's what the Minister is doing with the Single Education Authority. Now, what comes of that needs to be based on principles of equality right across sectors. No preferential treatment, every sector treated equally. We need also to look at the issue of efficiency. And the third issue, of course, is how we create a better shared future through our education system. So those are factors that need to be taken into account as we reshape education administration.
Isn't it howling at the moon, though, to wish the Catholic sector away? It's just not going to happen. Surely the future will be better cooperation between the sectors.
Well, what I am saying is that there should not be preferential treatment for that sector. And that if there's provision for one sector, it should be for other sectors as well.
You know, if you go back and look at the reason why the CCMS was set up in the first place, it was after the publication of a report which showed very clearly that the Catholic sector was extremely disadvantaged from the point of view of funding, and that's one of the reasons that the CCMS was set up, to ensure that there was equality between the maintained sector and the controlled sector. Now, everybody admits that the CCMS has done a very good job in raising standards within the Catholic maintained sector, and have brought a tremendous development to that sector. The controlled sector had its own representatives on the education and library boards, and it seems now that you're saying that those people didn't do their job properly by ensuring that the same development took place within the controlled sector.
I have sat on an education and library board for a good many years and have a lot of experience in that field. The difference is that the Roman Catholic Church controls and has exclusive control over its own sector. As regards the controlled schools, we have a situation where we are taking decisions about schools that are largely attended in Belfast anyway by Protestant children, and yet the representatives of the Roman Catholic Church have a say over how that sector is administered. Now that is an inequality. There's also no equivalent to CCMS in setting the ethos of the sector. So there are a whole lot of questions that are now starting to emerge as the system is deconstructed. I'm glad that they're out there in the open, and I hope we get to a better shared future with a more equitable system where the control sector gets a fair deal.
It's not correct or accurate to say that the Catholic hierarchy has total control over the Catholic sector. The curriculum in schools is set by the Department of Education. What is true is that the Catholic Church has control over the ethos in those schools, and that's why by definition they're called
let me just
Catholic
throw one
schools.
point in here as an option. One of the things that's being talked about very clearly is that there should be a single employing authority where you would reduce the cost of administration by having all teachers employed by the Education and Skills Authority, one body doing all the administration. Now, there's considerable opposition to that emerging from some sectors. But there's a way in which you could have equality
spell
across
it out for
all
which
sectors.
sector? The Catholic sector, you're saying?
They in particular are very
Yeah.
strong on that, yes. I think that we can address the concerns of the voluntary grammar schools. But the position that we were presented with by the Roman Catholic Church was this was a die-in-the-ditch issue.
Well, Dominic Bradley, I mean, for instance, you're aligned with Irish Labour in the Republic of Ireland, a sister socialist party. Their former leader, Rory Quinn, has said just recently that the Catholic Church should consider getting out of state-funded education in the Republic. So, if he believes that's what should be done in the Republic of Ireland, why should it be different in Northern Ireland?
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of Catholic education, in many cases, Catholic education here in the north of Ireland was not funded totally by the state, but was funded by Catholic people who contributed.
That's the history, but what about now today?
To the building of those schools. So the Catholic estate, to some extent, belongs to the Catholic Church, representing its parishioners. So therefore, you know, they have that right of ownership there, and I think it would be wrong to take that away.
I was just going to say we're going to be going over to culture questions fairly soon, I think. Anything to these rumours? You might be taking them fairly soon, Nelson?
Well, I know nothing about that. You obviously must know more than I do if you're asking questions. I know nothing about that.
So you'd be up for it if it was on offer?
No one has spoken to me and I haven't spoken to anyone about it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that. We'll leave it on that note. Thank you both very much indeed.